Hey everyone, it's Nadia from Leah Dia Designs, and I'm back with another tutorial. Today I am going to be making flower coasters. I know I've done a bunch in the past, and actually I wanted to do it again because a lot of my previous flower videos were not using Counterculture, which is the resin that I'm currently using. So I wanted to kind of do a quick test to see how they would turn out with the resin, with this new resin. So I currently use Counterculture's Artist Thin Viscosity resin. So it is a bit different than the medium that I used to use. And depending on how this turns out, there'll probably be another video coming up where I'm going to compare their thin viscosity to their medium viscosity, and then possibly any others that they carry that actually might work well for this technique as well. So, but it's like I said, it's been a while, and a lot of my videos sometimes they kind of get lost, as they get, buried deeper into my channel, and I know a lot of people are looking for different types of videos like this. So like I said, I'm gonna do one today, and I'm gonna see how they turn out. I haven't done this yet with this resin, so I don't know if it's going to succeed or fail or how it's going to work out. And I'm going to go back to my original technique. There's been a few different techniques I've tried, and if you go through, if you just search flowers in my, in the search of my YouTube channel, you should be able to find them, because I've done a few parts. I've done like 2 or 3, maybe 3 or 4 videos of how to do flowers and a few different techniques. But I'm going to go back to my original where I use a paintbrush to kind of add the details, or, to actually make the flower design. And that was my very, like I said, my very first video on making flowers was that. So I want to try that since, start at the beginning again. And then we'll see how that works. And if that works well, then there'll possibly be future videos using some of the other techniques with this resin as well. So this way we can compare them. Anyway, as always, I'm going to be, when I'm pouring, I'm going to have my respirator on and my gloves, and my exhaust fan's going to be running, so I'm not going to be able to talk during that part. So what I'll do is I'm going to quickly explain here now what it is that the process is, and I probably will just overlay this over the actual video of the pour. It may not line up exactly, but you'll get an overall idea of the process and how it's working. And then on the other side, once it's cured and we're actually taking it out of the mold, then we can discuss it again in terms of, what was done, how things worked. One of the key things that I want to talk about with this particular pour is that the one thing I've noticed with the Counterculture resins, especially their artist line resin, is that they start to cure, their working time is really short. Like, it starts to cure pretty fast. I know that when I worked with my previous resin, I had about 30 to 40 minutes of working time. Whereas with Counterculture, I've noticed, like I said, especially if I warm the resin, which is what I'm doing currently, is I'm warming the resin before I mix it, the working time really cuts down to about 20 to 25 minutes max. Like 25 minutes is total. Like, it's already starting to get too late at that point. So that's the reason why I want to test the technique as well, because before I used to wait a little bit longer before I started adding the flowers into the resin. But in this case, I don't think I'm going to wait very long, just because I won't have as much working time here. So all these reasons are why I wanted to give this a quick test, and hopefully it succeeds. And if not, then we'll discuss how it failed. But anyways, let me get all set up and I'll be back. Okay, so before we get started with the actual pour, let me quickly show you what products I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using, again, like I said, my Counterculture resin, and then my coasters. 2 of them are going to be clear, like an actual clear coaster with just the flowers in them. And 2 of them, I think I'm going to try to do kind of like not an opaque border, but a pigmented border. So it's not going to be, it's still going to be transparent, but it's going to have a color to it. So I'm going to try that on the outside, and then in the middle, it's just going to be clear, hopefully. And the flowers themselves are going to be white. Possibly I might be using some of the pigmented color resin on the clear ones as well, but we'll see how things go. So for the white, I'm using Lorez, and this is a pigment paste. And if you're not familiar, I find pigment paste to be the best to use for, let me see if I can get my I find pigment paste to be the best for actually making flowers. Micas, I've seen other people use micas, and I've actually tried mica powders in the past as well, and they will work. The effect is just different. If you want really kind of crisp lines for your flowers, or like really detailed flowers, pigment paste is the best. And basically, from what I understand pigment paste to be, it's resin, I believe. It's the resin part. Like part A or whatever, it might be part B for you, but the resin portion, and then they've mixed, I believe it's mica powder, into this. But because of how it's mixed, and because it's been kind of it kind of gels itself into this paste, it like I said, it gives a crisper line. When you just use mica powder, it tends to become more feathery and it dissipates a little bit more. You'll still get a really pretty flower. It's kind of, I've been told when I've done it before that the flowers look more ethereal. It's very kind of wispy and things like that. So just depending on the kind of flower you want to make and the look that you want, you can decide on whether or not it's going to be the pigment paste. And pigment pastes do come in all different colors and style. So there's shimmery, and then there's non-shimmery, which is more matte, and then they do have the transparent ones as well, which is what I'm going to be using for these top ones. So we have our white pigment paste, and I'm going to be using this Just Resin Ultramarine Pink, and this is a transparent. This jar gets a bit messy, but this is a transparent pigment paste. So as you can see on the lid here, like the color, it's kind of a purple color, dark magenta color. So we'll be using a bit of that. Very, very little of this will be used just to kind of tint the resin a little bit. And when I say little, it's like the tip of a toothpick. It's very small. And then same thing with this. I will be pigmenting the resin a little bit more with the white, the part that I'm going to be using to actually make the flowers, just so that we get a nice crisp line with the flowers and they don't fade too much. So we have those. I'm going to be using a little bit of glitter for maybe the edges as well. Not sure if it's going to be on both, but at least on the clear ones. And this is just a really nice chunky mixed glitter from Paradise Glitter, and this is their Diva. So I'm going to be using that. And what else? And for the centers of my flowers, I'm going to be using this DB Resin Products foil. So this is their rose gold metallic foil, and that's just going to be literally in the centers. So, all right. So, and then of course I have my paintbrush, and I'll be mixing. So I'll be mixing the small amounts of the colored pink. Oh, I already got foil in there. Going to be mixing the small amounts of resin that I'm just using for the pigmented parts in my little cups, and the clear and larger portions will be in larger cups. So I think that's pretty much everything. But so now I'll just go over the process really quick. Okay, so again, I'm going to try to do this as a voiceover for the actual pour itself. So hopefully this works out and it doesn't seem too confusing. So the first step is going to be probably pouring a little bit of whether it's the glitter resin or the pigmented resin around the edges of the coaster molds, just to kind of create a little bit of a border first. And then what I'll do is I'm going to be pouring the clear resin to almost fill the molds. So there'll be clear resin going into all 4 coaster molds and almost fill it, basically. I mean, it could be filled, but almost filled. And then once I've done that, then I will need to use my heat gun to try to see if I can get the majority of these bubbles out. So I'll just kind of, heat the resin a bit. Try not to heat the coaster molds too much, but, at least the resin part in the middle, we're going to try to get those bubbles out. And then once that's done, I'm going to add a little bit of the rose gold metallic flakes to the centers of each of them. And then once that's done, I will be I'll take a minute to mix my white and my the ultramarine pink that I'm using into a little bit of resin in those cups that I was showing you earlier. And then once I'm ready with that, I will be taking my paintbrush and I will be painting the designs into each of the coaster molds. So again, I'm going to have to work really quickly here because my resin does start to set around 20-25 minutes. And if it gets too thick or too set by that point, you can't run the paintbrush through it anymore, and it just kind of drags. So like I said before, I used to be able to wait, you know, 10 to 15 minutes for the resin to start to thicken a little bit, and then I was able to add my designs. But in this case, I'm not going to be doing that just because I know how fast this resin sets. Now, if you want to know the timing of your resin, I am going to link another video that I've made above here and probably at the end of the video, because that's one of the most important things you need to know is what is the working time. There is a working time that's obviously going to be stated on your bottles, but you need to know the actual working time that you need to use to make flowers or any other type of techniques that you're using or that you're planning to use for your resin for. So I have a kind of like a little test or a technique that I've developed and shared in a previous video where it allows you to kind of test your resin and get that timing figured out to see what works best for you. So I'll link that as well. So if you're not sure, definitely check that out, because some resins, I've heard a lot of people say that their resin, depending on what they're using, could take an hour before it starts to thicken up. So you might have to pour the resin into the mold and then wait an hour or 40 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes or an hour and 20 minutes, whatever it is. You might have to wait that long just to, you know, get your resin to that consistency that's needed to make flowers and to not have your pigments completely sink down, because when they sink down to actually the bottom of the coaster mold, then it leaves blobs. And if you're not looking for that look, this helps. You know, knowing the thickness that you need for your resin will help with that. So, and again, it'll change for certain techniques, and we can discuss that again later. So anyway, just so you know that that's an important part of this, is knowing the timing of your resin. And that's what I'm testing here again today with the resin I'm currently using. So if you're following this technique, please watch that other video first, and then, you know, you can follow this one if you want to. Okay, so going back to the coasters, so basically you'll see the technique is basically taking some of the pigment, putting it on the paintbrush, and I'm actually kind of, you know, putting my paintbrush right into the resin, so it's almost like cutting into the resin, but not touching the bottom of the coaster mold. And I'm actually going to make my petal shapes while I'm doing that. I'm going to keep dipping into my pigmented resin and adding that into the clear resin so that I'm making the flower shape. And once I've done that, then I will just take my brush and then I will add more details by dragging in certain sections to kind of make more petals and things like that. And once I'm done all of that, then pretty much all we can do now is wait. But before I leave it, I will take my torch and I'll quickly give it a bit of a hit just to get any surface bubbles out. And again, keeping the flame away from your molds, because the molds will definitely get damaged with a torch. So you definitely want to make sure you're not getting your flame anywhere near the coaster edges, the coaster mold edges. So just mostly in the middle anyways, where you're probably going to find any kind of bubbles, just because we were dipping in our brush into the resin. So we might be causing little bubble pockets during that time. So we're going to quickly do that. Again, really lightly, really quickly. And then once we're done with that, we just have to let it set and it will do its magic. And hopefully in the morning we'll have flowers. So anyway, so we'll just leave it here and then we'll be back in the morning to check it out. All right, so it's the next morning and we're back to check on our flowers. And as you can see, they're fully cured now, or almost fully cured. So we're just going to take we're going to get ready to unmold them, but we'll take a quick look at the backs of them first, because I want to show you something that is actually part of the technique that I was discussing earlier about timing your resin. So this one here, as you can see, was the first one that I did in terms of adding the flower design. So there was almost no waiting time. It was literally as soon as possible after mixing all the resin and then mixing the white pigment that I added this design. And then this was the next one, and this was the third one, and the last one that I did. So the time from doing the flower design on this one here, and then the time from doing the flower on this one here, there's probably, if we say we took 2 to 3 minutes per flower, by the time we got here, we're at, you know, 10 to 12 minutes. So the resin was sitting, the clear resin was sitting for 10 to 12 minutes by the time we got to this one here. So you can see that, I will pick them up, but you can see this one has a very feathery, light look. Not feathery, but it's just, it has kind of that, you know, more translucent look, where there was a lot of movement that happened with the flower here. You can tell from the back that, you know, it's more translucent with the petals and things like that. And then this one, I have to clean up the edges, but in this one, you can see that the pigment actually seemed like it didn't move as much, and that it's more opaque, like in some areas. Like if you compare this and this, you can see that this definitely has more translucency to it, and this one has more opaqueness. And I didn't really do anything too different between the technique of the flower for this one and the technique of the flower for this one. So it's because the resin was starting to thicken, and the flower wasn't the petals weren't moving as much with like the pigment to create the petals. So that's kind of the whole theory of, my test for resin, is that we kind of figure out timing based upon, how long it was that you poured each one, and then you wait in between to make your designs. And then from that, you kind of have an idea of which one's working out best for your resin. Now, again, like I said, I moved right away to create these flower designs because I already know that my resin sets very fast. But if you're not sure, you kind of have to figure out that baseline first. So, let's say you know that waiting 30 minutes isn't enough. So you need to wait 40 or 45. And then from there, you're waiting a different time for each one. But anyways, again, I linked that video earlier on in this video here, and I'll link it at the end as well, like on the last screen. So you can check that out for the full process of how to time your resin. But anyways, you can see the difference. So we'll unmold them now and see how they look. All right, so let's go get these unmolded. I really like actually the soft translucent edges on these ones here. So this is this flower here. So again, you can see that, the flowers are very translucent, but yet the edges, because of the pigment paste, we're getting some really nice edges on our petals, especially on the inner petals there. So that is the first one. And again, like I said, I really like this fading of the color of that, that purplish color around the edges to bring it in, and then just having it kind of slowly come in. And we'll do this. Hope this one should look similar. So we'll have a pair. Yep. So there we go. And I did add a little tiny bit of sparkle to those edges as well. Not a lot, but just a hint there as well. So we have that one. And then we have these. So this one here, what I did is I used both of the colors. I used the white pigment, and as well as the same pigment that I had used for the edges, I used in between the petals for this one, but I had added a bit more of the pigment into it. So it does color those petals a little bit more. And because also, I guess because there's two different colors, they're competing here to, it turns out, it looks like the purple actually sank a little bit more than the white on these ones. So that's interesting, because generally speaking, the white is usually their heavier pigment. So I'll be testing that a little bit more. It's the first time I've tried that translucent pigment with the white to make a flower. So it created a really cool look actually with the translucency of them both. So there's that. And then again, this is our last one. And it's very similar. And you can see again, if we'll look at these side by side again on the front side, you can see how much more, like it's just less translucent, less wispy the flower petals are here. And again, I think it's because there's also two different color pigments. So we're actually seeing a mix. It's creating a more solid color for our flower compared to how translucent this is, but also the waiting time for this, because it was long, a little bit longer, we're getting even more definition in our petals, like there was more there. So in any case, we do have, they all turned out really pretty. And again, I put more of the glitter on the edges of these ones here. And there's, like I said, there's not as many drops. So with the brush technique, one of the things I really like about the brush technique is that you're not accidentally over pouring too much of the pigment into the resin to make the flowers. With some of the other techniques, especially the piping bag technique, which I use in some of my other tutorials, the one thing I found is it's necessary to wait for those ones for the resin to thicken, because if you don't wait, then you're going to get tons of drops, like all these drops that you see here. There's only a few, which actually adds to the design. I've done it before where we use a piping bag and we didn't wait for the resin to thicken, and literally like the whole thing ended up being lots and lots of dots and blobs. So, but with the brush technique, what's pretty about it is that it doesn't allow you really to over apply too much resin of the pigmented resin, because you're literally just using what the fine brush can hold and making your designs out of that. And it allows you to kind of get that, you know, those really pretty petals with it. And you can, like I said, you can do the same. You can get amazing flowers with the piping method too. But again, you just have to know what the viscosity of your, or something, the thickness of your resin needs to be in terms of viscosity. And so that's an important part of this process. If you're just kind of starting out and you're not sure about all that and you just want to see if you can make flowers, for me, this technique is an easier one, especially if you're just kind of getting started and you're not sure, you know, how much pigment paste to add, or you know, the timing of your resin or whatever. This gives you a bit more forgiveness in that, so that you can kind of build your way up from there. So in any case, I hope you guys like this tutorial, and I hope you like these flowers. I'm going to get another quick little video glamour shot of them, and then we'll get going for this tutorial. So in any case, I hope you guys really like these flowers. It's been a little while since I've made them, but they turned out really great with the counterculture resin. And like I said, I tried something a little bit new, adding the translucent pigment paste to these. So these are really interesting as well. I will have to play with it a little bit more, because it's again, to figure out, you know, which one's sinking more, the translucent pigment paste or the white. Normally white is the one that sinks the most, but something a little different happened here. But anyways, I still think these turned out really pretty, as well as these ones here. I think these are my favorite, with the you know, the edging there. So in any case, let me know which you liked best out of the 4, or even out of the 2 pairs. Which style did you like better? And you know, is this a technique that you've tried for flowers, or is there another technique that you've tried that you like even better, or you find it's even easier? Let me know in the comments what you think. And yeah, so anyways, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks so much. Take care. Bye.